Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 273, The Future of Organic Produce with Alina Zolotareva.
In today's episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk to Alina Zolotareva about the future of organic produce. She tells us about Aerofarms, who planted their roots in the city of New Jersey. Alina helps us uncover what we really need to know about our greens. Have you ever wondered what organic really means, or if the food that you're paying a premium for can actually be called sustainable? Alina tells us how much produce is actually being wasted from the time it blooms in the fields to when it is shipped across countries and borders. Never mind the waste in our refrigerators. So now I bet you're thinking, if it's being shipped so far, are there any nutrients left in those cucumbers? Well, the answers might just kale you. And as usual, we thank you all for your ratings, reviews on Apple Podcasts, and your interactions on Instagram. And if you haven't yet followed us at Plant Trainers on Instagram, please do it now.
Alina is an RDN. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist who leverages her background in nutrition science and public health to translate nutrition science to consumers. That plays a key role in Aerofarms' mission to combat food deserts and bring fresh, local, nutritious leafy greens to all communities. In addition to marketing and sales, Alina also leads product development, working on the cutting edge of leafy greens innovation in flavor and nutrition. Before Aerofarms, Alina had worked for a culinary nutrition food service consulting company based in New York City who focused on improving health through great tasting and sustainable food. She has also spent time in nutrition and marketing at Unilever and other local food brands. Alina is a graduate of Cornell University and presidential research scholar with a BS with honors in nutrition sciences and dietetics. She is passionate about all things food and wellness and believes that the only way great health can be achieved for all people is through food that tastes great. We want to thank everyone for their support with the Yummy Foods activity book for kids that we recently published and is now available on Amazon and Kindle. We know it's being used in homeschooling programs as community outreach materials, as well as a way to keep kids busy, learning, and having fun without electronics. We wanted to share a few testimonials. Happy customers have left. And this one's from Jessica.
I love learning about new foods. Still being a fairly new vegan family, I would love for them to learn even more. I was pleasantly surprised when we received the workbooks and every one of my children, ages 1, 3, 8, 10, 12, and 16 took interest. Wow. Well done, Shoshana and Adam. This book is interesting, fun, informative, and I feel good about the fact that my kids are not only wanting to play with it, but they are learning at the same time. Win-win.
This one's from Timothy.
The recipe activities are great. No stress. It's a way to bond with your kids in the kitchen and teach basic kitchen skills. I recommend it for homeschooling, church-based programs, and presentations to elementary school kids. The worksheets can also be used as fun activities to test basic food literacy knowledge in adult-based presentations.
To get yourself or a young one a copy, visit the link in our show notes, which is planttrainers.com/yummyfoods, or search Yummy Foods on your country's Amazon site. And now for a moment of gratitude.
Today, I am grateful for our neighbor, Amy, who went to the grocery store and picked something up for us twice this week. It was really helpful, and I am grateful.
I'm grateful for this volleyball team that I'm working with. It's a bunch of great boys who work really hard, who show up to practice, who put in all their effort during their games, and it's just been a really great group of guys to hang out with.
Alina Zolotareva, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'd love to know if you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and the listeners.
Absolutely. I have so much to be grateful for, but, in particular, based on what we're talking about, I'm really grateful to be able to be working in an industry that's really helping the future of humanity in a big way. So I'm really grateful to wake up every morning and be able to do that and follow my passion.
I think what you guys are doing is huge, and it's going to make a huge impact on the world. And we're going to get into that very soon. But before we do, let's kind of set a pace and take a look at, let's just discuss first what organic really means. And let's have people have an understanding of if their food is organic and what they need to know about it.
What I'll say is, let me just backtrack for a quick second here. I myself am a registered dietitian, and I work in the field of vertical farming. And what vertical farming is growing food, kind of like up instead of out. And the way that we do vertical farming at my company, Aerofarms, is we do it locally. So we do it in cities. Our headquarters is based in Newark, New Jersey, not really a place that you would necessarily associate with farms or fresh food. But the idea is, how do we grow healthy, fresh food in a way that's environmentally sustainable all year round and accessible to people, right? So today, organic is a really hot topic. It's a really big trend. It's associated with healthy food. It's associated with safe practices, safe farming practices, and it's associated with
junk food also. You have the junk food aisle that's all filled with organic foods too.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a buzzword that when you can go to a supermarket and see organic gummy bears or organic
nacho chips,
candy, nachos, right? And it feels good. You're like, okay, since it's organic, it must be good for me. What organic really means, organic is a set of standards that is upheld, by a variety of certifying bodies. It's a set of farming practices and growing practices that really focuses on growing food in a way that minimizes or eliminates synthetic practices and maximizes, the health of the soil and the quality of the end product. So that's kind of like the ethos of organic. But today it's a little bit of a gray area because farming isn't really exactly what people imagine it to be anymore. So people might think of farming as kind of like, beautiful green fields filled with produce and bees and, this kind of beautiful scene. But really, most food, and specifically the food that we grow, which is leafy greens, is really grown on these enormous farms, mostly out in California or Numa, Arizona. It's really intensive industrial work. So even organic farming is quite industrial today. To be certified organic, certain practices have to be followed, and they can be rigorous, but very, very often, it's organic products are still, for example, sprayed with pesticides. It's just a certain range of pesticides is used, a certain set of pesticides that are allowed by the certifying body. So the way that people perceive organics isn't exactly what's actually happening in the field today.
So it sounds like the best way or the safest way to get your produce would be to grow it yourself. But that doesn't seem so practical for everybody, especially living in the city. So we've seen those water towers, or there's different refrigerators that you can get for your home to grow your own greens. But what you guys are doing is very interesting. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the way you're doing your farming.
Yeah, sure. So exactly. You touched on something really, really important. So today, even beyond organic, people are really interested and curious about where their food is coming from, and they want to know where it's coming from. They want to be able to trust the source of their food. And because farming is done on such a large scale, and because it's all centralized farming, right? It's for example, the bulk of our leafy greens are coming from California. It's not distributed across the country. It's really mostly coming from there and then distributed throughout the rest of the country. So because of that, because of this centralized, large-scale industrial farming, it's really hard to trace back exactly where your food is coming from, who grew it, and to get that level of traceability and safety. And
I'm going to stop you right there before you continue. Sorry,
sure.
I think a lot of people now might be thinking, but why is that important for me to know?
Oh, sure. Why is that important? So, if you look at the news even today, you see a lot of recalls that are happening. Leafy greens are considered one of the most dangerous foods to eat, according to the government, because they're consumed fresh, right? They're consumed fresh. So when you eat fresh food, there's a higher chance that if a little bug gets in, bacteria, that it'll be more dangerous. So
E. coli, parasites.
Oh, right. Contamination, all sorts of things. So it's from a food safety standpoint, it's really important to be able to trace back the food to the source. So if there is ever an issue, you can pinpoint it and you can eliminate it. So from a supply chain standpoint, because it's such a long supply chain, it's really hard to figure out where the root cause of the issue is, if there ever is a root cause. I mean, it's in the headlines all the time. A couple of years ago it was Chipotle. Recently it's McDonald's and the lettuce recall that's happening at McDonald's. So it can happen to anyone. It can happen to any of us, right? So just from a safety standpoint, at the end of the day, the main goal of the food industry is to provide people with safe food, right? Safety is number one. So that's why it's really important to understand where your food is coming from. The second reason, of course, is we want to make sure that the farming practices that are used are good for the environment. We want to make sure that farmers are doing the right thing for the environment, not overusing water. When it comes to farming, 70% of our fresh water it goes to agriculture. So our freshwater supply is really going to growing our food all over the world. But then 70% of our freshwater contamination is coming from agriculture. So all of those pesticides, all of those chemical fertilizers that are used, the runoff from there goes into our freshwater supplies, and then it devastates the environment. And so those facts, coupled with the fact that our arable land, our farmable land, has been decreasing dramatically over the last several decades, it's really not a good thing for us as our population continues to increase, as we have more mouths to feed. If our planet can't support all of the people living on the planet and the increasing global population, it's going to be really, really tough for us going into the future. So when it comes to what we do at Aerofarms, it's really looking at everything that's going on in farming today, understanding that we have more mouths to feed, understanding that more people are moving to cities, and understanding that people want to know where their food is coming from. People want to eat fresh, healthy food. So really, we came into the industry trying to solve all of these problems at once. And so, that's the way that we grow food really addresses all of the things that I just mentioned.
I know we've heard some lectures, and there are some doctors saying that although we're supposed to eat all these leafy greens, that's just not sustainable. If everybody went vegan or everybody went plant-based, we wouldn't be able to feed 7.5 billion people green leafies and potatoes all the time, because we wouldn't have enough land to do that and to be able to house everybody. But why are we having a decrease in sustainable land to be able to grow all these vegetables, like you mentioned?
The question is why you mentioned that the arable land going down?
You mentioned that the land that we have is decreasing, the amount to be able to grow these vegetables.
Right. That's because of poor farming practices. So our topsoil is eroding, pressures from climate change, not rotating crops correctly, not using responsible farming practices that help the soil replenish and rejuvenate before the next planting. All of those things have contributed to the loss of arable land, and this is a global phenomenon. So this isn't just in the United States. That's one of those trends.
The other problem with getting all our greens from California, like you mentioned before, is that by the time it gets to us, not only are we wasting water in transport, but what about the nutrient density of the food? Are we losing it there?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. So It's interesting because a lot of people ask me, well, you're a nutritionist, you studied nutrition and dietetics, why are you working in vertical farming? And my response is always, the only way for me to ensure that people can get access to the highest quality produce is to go to the root, right? To go to the source. It's really interesting. If you look at some studies over the last 50 or so years, the quality of our fruits and vegetables in general has been decreasing. So while the size of the produce might look larger, so we have bigger apples, we have larger pieces of produce, seemingly, they're higher in starches and sugars, but they're lower in nutrient density, and that has to do with the quality of the soil that we were talking about and those farming practices. On top of that, what often happens with food is it's picked before it's ripe, and then it's ripened artificially in trucks, and in distribution facilities before it gets to our supermarkets. So right there, you have another challenge, which is food isn't being picked at its peak nutrition. It's being picked in order to be transported. And then when it comes to leafy greens, as I mentioned, are coming from California, and then they're coming all the way to the East Coast, which is thousands of miles. And by the time it gets to us, it could be several weeks old. So you can have a 2-week-old salad. The second that you harvest greens, the second that you cut a plant, the amount of vitamin C starts to exponentially decrease. So you're lower in vitamin C. Other phytonutrients and phytochemicals are also decreasing, and not only the nutrition but the flavor. Right? It doesn't taste that good anymore. The produce only really tastes great when it's close to harvest. So the longer it sits after harvest, the less likely we are going to enjoy it too, and the lower the quality is going to be. And then I'll just mention one more thing that's really near and dear to my heart, and that's food waste. And this is an egregious problem that we need to solve as an industry, not just as an industry, but just as a society, as a human community. Today, the number that everybody knows is 40%. So food waste across all categories is around 40%.
Like, boom, to the garbage.
To the garbage, right? And all the food waste is going where? It's going into landfill. And when it sits, food is biodegradable, right? It's organic matter. But the second that you put it into landfill, the same banana peel that would have taken a month or two to biodegrade, all of a sudden biodegrades in 25 years. So it's really crazy stuff. But now, if you think about leafy greens, there's a 76% net loss across the supply chain. Wow. From seed to plate. 76%. All of that energy, all of those resources going into growing this food in the trash. And that's because it's such a challenging supply chain, right? There's so much demand for these leafy greens, but the way that if we step back for a second, right, and just kind of trace it, the way that leafy greens grow, so they grow out in these huge fields. They're harvested, right? They're put on the back of a truck. There's a lot of spoilage that happens there just as they're being harvested. If something doesn't look pretty, if there's a little bit of a blemish, that gets thrown back into the field, doesn't even make it. Then there goes into a pretty intensive process of triple washing, packaging, sitting in a distribution facility. There's some good waste that happens there. Then it gets on a truck, travels a week or so to another distribution facility somewhere across the country. Waste happens there, sits on the supermarket shelf, and supermarkets often have a lot of variable temperatures. If you keep leafy greens anywhere outside of their optimal range, they just start to decay. So we've got, challenges at the supermarket level. And then what do? We buy them, we bring them home. And I can guarantee you that every listener or every other listener on this call has rotting kale in their fridge, right? And all that goes into the trash. So we have 76% waste, right? But a lot of that can be minimized or eliminated by growing food locally, right? Because when the turnaround time from harvest to store or to plate is within 24 hours, you don't have that waste, right? You don't have that loss of nutrition.
But you also don't have that ability when you live in the middle of downtown Toronto or New York City or New Jersey. You don't have
I don't have the
that ability.
space. I don't have the time. I don't have the
Right.
know-how.
You're making me want to sell everything in my house and buy like a small little orchard in California and set up my dinner table in the middle of the field and just pick everything and bring it straight to the table and eat it in 35 seconds.
Right. But
that's just not doable.
Yeah, but that's
for most people.
But that's why Aerofarms exists. So what is Aerofarms? So Aerofarms, we are the largest indoor vertical farm in the world. We're based, again, as I mentioned, out of Newark, New Jersey, which is, a hop, skip, and a jump away from New York City, super close to Philadelphia, Connecticut, really a hub of commerce, if you will, and historically has been. And so, we grow leafy greens all year round, independent of season, in a controlled indoor environment. And just within 24 hours of harvest, distribute to places like Whole Foods and ShopRite and Fresh Direct, sell direct to consumer, to restaurants. So super fresh leafy greens, baby greens, microgreens, all year round. So the model for us is really, taking this super perishable, super nutritious, important crop, and growing it in a way where it's delicious and nutrient dense and accessible all year round to people who live in cities. And it works.
We're taking a break from this episode to let you know about this awesome recipe book. So calling all chefs out there, well, people who need to cook to be able to eat.
We're always getting emails and DMs asking us what to do and what to make. Well, just the other night we were at a friend's house who must have had 45 cookbooks. Now, the problem with that is not the hundreds of dollars that she spent on the cookbooks, but the hundreds of dollars that's going to get wasted on buying ingredients that are going to go unused because she'll only use a little bit for this and a little bit for that.
Our e-cookbook, Easy Recipes for Busy Parents, isn't like that. Actually, it's not just for parents, it's for any person who needs to cook and eat, who doesn't want to throw away half the unused ingredients in 6 months' time once they expire or were never used. So this amazing recipe book will not cost you only $7.99. It will save you hundreds of dollars by reusing ingredients and millions of seconds you would have wasted wondering what's for dinner.
And of course, you could purchase multiple copies to give as gifts. So find it now at planttrainers.com/shop or click Easy Recipes for Busy Parents in the show notes. And now back to the show. It works, but in theory, it sounds amazing. So let me ask the questions that are going to make people skeptical. Or no, let me rephrase that. I'm going to ask the questions that skeptics might have.
Sure.
You're raising these greens with no sunlight and no soil. And from the age of 5 years old in kindergarten, we learned that plants need soil and plants need sunlight to be able to grow. So how is it that they're growing properly and that they are nutrient dense enough? And how do we know that they are?
Of course. Okay. So, when it comes to growing a plant, right, we can go back to our sort of basic science classes and talk about that. So what plants need is not necessarily sunlight. The sunlight, what it does is it provides spectrum, right, that the plants use for photosynthesis. So the way that we grow, we don't use sunlight. We use LED lights that are customized. We custom design them to provide the plants with exactly the kinds of wavelengths and the spectra that they need for optimal photosynthesis. The sun also has the full range of all of the spectra. Plants don't actually need all of them. Plants only need a select range of spectra for optimal photosynthesis. So that's what we give them from a lighting standpoint. From a soil standpoint, so what soil really is a medium for holding water and nutrients and other beneficial organisms, right? That then, like nitrogen-fixing bacteria and fungi and all of those things that help the root zone, help the healthy root zone, and help plants absorb and uptake more nutrients. So what we do at Aerofarms is we use a technique called Aeroponics. Your listeners might be familiar with hydroponics. So in hydroponics, what typically happens is the root systems of the plants, whether it's a tomato plant or it's a leafy green plant, usually those roots are they're submerged in water, and the water has nutrients in it. So all of the essential nutrients that plants need, again, for growing. And they're submerged in that water. And then that water is typically pumped with oxygen because root zones need oxygen. Healthy roots need oxygen as well. So what we do at Aerofarms is we grow on a cloth medium, and our roots hang and are misted with this nutrient mist. So all of the essential elements, all the macro and micronutrients that plants need, they're getting. And on top of that, they're not being submerged in water, they're hanging, so they're getting a really, really healthy oxygenation as well. And then they grow in around, that's all that we do. We use the same seeds as farmers use out in the field. So everything is non-GMO. And we don't use any pesticides. So because we grow in an indoor controlled environment, we're not subject to, weather fluctuations. We're not subject to the outdoor pests that farmers have to constantly battle with. So we don't have to use any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides, nothing. They're totally clean.
That also means that your wastage is less because you're not getting infested by insects.
Totally. And so we're able to harvest almost everything that we grow and minimize or eliminate that waste. Exactly. And so, I didn't really go much into the story of Aerofarms, but Aerofarms was started by Dr. Ed Harwood, who was a dairy science professor up at Cornell University in Ithaca. And he worked with farmers with Cornell Cooperative Extension, and he saw how challenging it was to grow food. And his intention and his mission in designing this, the first iterations of this technology, this aeroponic technology, was to help farmers ensure a crop, was to help farmers grow food even in the middle of winter in Ithaca, New York, right? So he was doing this really to help solve a problem that farmers had. And, zoom forward today, we see all of the pressures of climate change. We see the pressures of more urbanization, higher global population, and that continuing to increase. And the need for this kind of technology is more and more. Yeah, just going back to the roots a little bit of Aerofarms and the mission.
Okay, so is this making it more affordable for people, or is this just for the elite? And how are you getting into people's hands?
Right. So, first of all, we're a mission-driven organization. We're a B corporation. So everything that we do is done with all of our stakeholders and the environment in mind. So by no means is this just for the elite. Aerofarm. So first of all, we're in Newark, New Jersey. One of the reasons we planted our headquarters there, another pun, apologies, is because we really wanted to bring industry and jobs to a city that's challenged. So we could have built a farm in New York City, we could have built a farm anywhere, but we really decided to root ourselves in Newark and create dozens of new jobs for folks, green, fair wage jobs with benefits. In terms of the price point of our greens, they are priced exactly the same as anything else in the category. So from a quality standpoint, our greens are in many ways a superior product. They're super local all year round. They have no pesticides on them. You know exactly where they're coming from. And they taste amazing. I know it's hard to convey taste through audio. But I will say, when I came to work for this company, I came from, my background is in the food industry and in restaurants and fine dining and consulting, and I ate amazing food. When I tasted these greens, before I tasted them, I was a little bit skeptical. I was like, there's no soil. I didn't know what to expect. Typically, I associated hydroponics with food that didn't taste so good, kind of bland, watered down flavors. But these greens were more flavorful than anything that I had ever tasted. And so the taste of these greens is amazing. And that's actually a whole other topic as far as how we merge data science and plant science and technology to be able to influence the flavor profile, the texture, the color of plants naturally. So I can get into that in just a minute. But our price point is $3.99 for a clamshell of greens, which is the same as you'll find anywhere at the store in New York City or New Jersey. We also have a farm stand, and so we have a farm stand open once a week to the community, where folks can come in and buy our greens at a fraction of the cost. And we open our doors every single week. So the idea here is to be able to help places that are food deserts get access to fresh food all year round. Yeah, big part of our mission. for sure.
So not only are you the same price as everybody else, but you're definitely getting a bigger bang for your buck in terms of the nutrient density and the flavor profile. But you said that you're able to control that. So does that make it genetically modified?
No. So I would actually even characterize this as like the opposite of GMO. So in GMO, or in genetic modification, what you're doing is you're going in and you're tweaking the genetics of the plant to fit the environment. So a genetically modified corn, for example, is created to be able to thrive and grow in the middle of the country, regardless of a bunch of external factors, right? To ensure as consistent of a crop as possible, regardless of what's going on in the environment. What we're doing is we're using the same seeds, organic seeds, right, and creating the optimal environment for them to thrive. So we're kind of going the opposite way. We're saying, this is here, little seed, what do you need to thrive? We're going to give you the right nutrients. We're going to give you the right spectrum of light. We're going to give you the right temperature, the right humidity, the right number of days, the right other variables, the right algorithms, as we call them, so that the seed grows into the healthiest, highest quality, highest nutrient density products possible.
That sounds a lot better than GMO.
Yeah, no, for
than
sure.
GMO.
Yeah, the way that
is your only
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the way that I like to, the story that I like to tell, or the analogy that I like to give is, if you have a twin. So let's say you have a twin, Shoshana, and you exercise, you take care of yourself, you eat a plant-based diet, you get plenty of sleep, plenty of, you have time with your friends, you're happy. So the way that you're going to look and the way that you're going to feel and the way that, if you were a plant, the way that you would taste would be one way. But let's say your twin is really, not like you.
They
doesn't
smoke,
really work out.
They don't exercise. They
yeah. Genetically, you're the same. You're identical, right? But the outcome in terms of your health, your well-being, your phenotype, if you will, is totally different, right? So the seed genetics are the same as the seeds growing out in the field. But what we're doing is we're tweaking the environment to optimize the end result or the end product. Does that kind of make sense?
It really does. Is this the same as those towers that you can buy for your home? Are you familiar with those?
Yeah, of course. So those towers, the Aeroponics sort of cylindrical towers. Yeah, you can buy them, and you can. Those are smaller units. Like if you have a restaurant or a small business, and it's something that you want to bring into your home to grow a little bit of food, for sure. But what I would say is what we do at Aerofarms is very different. We have a robust team of plant scientists and engineers and dietitians and folks that really understand plants inside and out. And we're as much of a data company and a technology company as we are a farm. So what we're doing is with every harvest, in addition to harvesting plants, we also harvest insights, if you will, and data. And so we have a robust, data science team that makes sure that every plant that we harvest feeds back into our feedback loop and informs the next harvest. And so we're constantly optimizing our harvests and constantly optimizing our practices and our operations. So it's quite a sophisticated version of that. Of that tower garden, if you will. And our environmental controls are very, very robust as well. So each of our farms is a controlled, optimized sort of plant lab in many ways. So in order to get that consistency at that scale, I mean, if you think about it, we have a 70,000 square foot footprint, and out of that footprint, our farm isn't fully built out yet, but we have about half of it built out. By the time it all gets built out of that 70,000 square foot footprint, we expect 1.5 to 2 million pounds of leafy greens every year. So
what I was going to say is we flirted with the idea of having those towers in our home before. The only problem is that we'd need like 10 because one tower would fill like one of us of the amount of greens that we eat on a regular basis, right? And then if we're not home for 2 weeks because we're going away or something like that, like then what? Right. But it's definitely not a bad, like, I don't think those towers are a bad thing, but what you're doing is a completely different scale.
Right.
But so for people that are not in your area or not in the area that you're supplying, how, like for us example, how do we get our hands on these greens? Or are you going to be coming out with the technology for independent consumers to be able to make these greens in their own homes as well?
Yeah, so I think, right, well, our business model today, and it's really interesting. We've gotten so much amazing demand from all over the country. We've even had folks from California say, I'd love for you to ship us your greens because they're so amazing. But our business model today is really to build the farms where the mouths are. So, our next steps are, we have a lot of potential new projects on the docket. Toronto isn't too far actually from us. So at some point in the future, there's a possibility that we might build a farm a little bit closer to you and be able to distribute to your city. So that's definitely a possibility. We don't sell our technology. So today we really own and operate all of our farms, and our technology is our IP. But in the future, I know there's a lot of interest in growing our own food and being able to do that at home. So, I don't think anything's off the table. I don't think anything's off the table for the future. But today, we own and operate large scale farms, large scale facilities.
Just you only have that one location in New Jersey?
Yeah, so right now our biggest location is our headquarter farm. It's a 70,000 square foot facility that I shared with you. We do have a couple of other farms. So we have 2 research and development farms also in Newark, New Jersey, smaller footprint, but that's where we do some of our top secret work. And then we also have a small farm in a school in Newark, New Jersey as well. And that was our first farm in Newark. And that was built out in 2009. And it's a 2-level farm, a small unit, and it's really a learning unit for the students. And the 6th graders learn science, they learn engineering, they learn technology, and they grow their own plants. And then they eat their salad for lunch in their cafeteria. So it's actually, the farm is in their cafeteria.
That's an amazing program.
Yeah, it's there. Phillips Academy does an amazing job, and they also have a rooftop farm, a soil farm. So in the middle of Newark, where there really isn't much going on from a greenery standpoint, if you will. I mean, you go into that school and it's in a way like a learning oasis, really. They've done a fantastic job.
I think rooftop farms are becoming more popular too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know about Toronto, but New York City has a huge urban farming movement and green food movement, and we have tons of urban farms.
So if people are in your area and they're going to the grocery store, how do they know what to look for in the store to know that it's coming from the Aerofarms?
We have a brand called Dream Greens, actually. So if you want to check it out, it's dreamgreens.com, and that's our retail brand, our consumer brand. If you live in New York City, New Jersey, or in any of the surrounding states and have access to Fresh Direct, which is an e-commerce platform for food and grocery, you can get Dream Greens delivered right to your doorstep at any time. So definitely check that out. And if you're in the New Jersey area, we are in a select number of doors of Whole Foods and ShopRite and some other local supermarkets.
I can't wait to share this with my personal friends and family who live nearby so that they can start to get their hands on it if they haven't already.
Yeah, definitely.
So for people that don't have access to the greens that you're providing, what kind of tips can you provide them to either grow their own or look for in the grocery store that would give them greens that have more nutrient density and possibly even more sustainable, healthy foods?
Totally. Okay, so what I will say is, first and foremost, just to level set with folks, it's better to eat more plants and more plant-based foods, period. So if you're not already doing so, people worry a lot about, am I buying the right thing? Am I eating the right thing? And it can get really, really complicated and confusing and overwhelming. So I think first and foremost, as a dietitian, I would say, make sure you're eating fresh produce as often as possible, every day if possible, right? no matter where you're getting it from, no matter how it comes. That's number one. Number two, if you want to make better choices, what I would say is, if you are lucky enough to have a farmer's market in your area or in the surrounding area, go to the farmer's market. Talk to the folks that are growing food locally, get to know them, ask them how they grow their food, visit them if you have the time, and if you have the curiosity. Really get a little bit more connected to where your food is coming from, so that you can have a much deeper connection with that. And when you talk to farmers, very often small farmers at the farmers market, they use fantastic practices. They might not be certified organic, but they're using all of the same practices as an organic farmer. Just maybe the certification is out of reach for them from a pricing standpoint, et cetera. But yeah, talk to your farmers and get to know them. And then, at your local supermarket, talk to your retailers and ask them, do you carry local products? What are the local products that you carry? If you don't carry local products, do you carry, look for the organic products that are carried. Or again, organic is not foolproof, but it can often mean that it's a little bit better for you than some of the other products out there that you might not know the practices of at all. And then the third thing is, frozen food is also quite nutrient dense. So if you're purchasing things like berries that are really nutritious, but not always in season, or other fresh fruits and vegetables, getting frozen organic produce is a great way to go, because freezing conserves a lot of the nutrients, and so it's a great choice as well. So those are just some of the tips that you can use.
Those are some very good tips. I think there's something that everybody could learn from that. Alina, we want to thank you so much for the time that you spent with us today. You're extremely knowledgeable. Thank you for getting that food that you're getting out into the hands of the people in your area. And we really look forward to the growth of your company, and to see what it can do for your country, and maybe even leak into ours a little bit too.
Alina, if people wanted to reach out to you, where would be the best place for them to contact you?
Sure. So if you're interested in Aerofarms, definitely go on our website. It's www.aerofarms.com, AEROFARMS. And then if you're on social media, the best way to even reach me, because I oversee our marketing at the company. So go directly to @Aerofarms on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and reach out there, comment, or send us a direct message, and we'll get right back to you.
And we'll put all those links in our show notes at planttrainers.com so people can connect with you to learn more. Thank you so much, Alina, for sharing all your knowledge. We really do appreciate all you're doing for the people and the environment and your community specifically.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast listening platforms. We appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it ensures other people will find us too. Thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, visit www.patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference. Connect and follow us on Instagram and Twitter @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at www.planttrainers.com for awesome plant-based recipes and a list of our services. Email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so we can answer them on our upcoming Facebook Lives. We hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time, and have a healthy day.